are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, your host for Locked On Seahawks. Joining me as always, my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. The calendar flipping to November, and we finally get to enjoy a Victory Monday. It feels like it has been a lifetime since the last time the Seahawks won a game, but thankfully we didn't have to worry too much on Sunday with the Seahawks winning 31-7, a game that really never felt in doubt, a dominant effort on all three phases from kickoff to the end of the game. Didn't have to worry about any drama at Lumen Field in Week 8, and the Seahawks will go into the bye with a bit of momentum, and they've got some other good news to share as well as they head into their week off. Looking forward to breaking that down on today's show. Thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Now for your lead story here on Locked On Seahawks. After weeks of speculation, the pin is out. I repeat, the pin is out. Russell Wilson's pin in his surgically repaired right middle finger removed today. He posted on social media, much to the delight of the 12s everywhere, opening the door for Wilson to return as quickly as Week 10 in Green Bay against the Packers. They get the big win yesterday, Rob, to move to 3-5. They're still in last place in the division, but that's momentum they badly needed, and now they get this good news less than 24 hours later that really opens the door for Russell Wilson to come back after the bye, which would be a huge boost to team morale as they try to crawl back into playoff contention.
Yeah, that's the thing, Corbin. There's been so much speculation that this would be exactly what would happen, is that Russell Wilson would get the pin removed during this week bye and then still be able to prepare for the Seahawks' next game, of course, on the road at Lambeau Field against the Green Bay Packers. But that's all it was speculation. I mean, Pete Carroll wasn't even willing to acknowledge that Russell Wilson was likely to have the pin removed. During today's press conference, as you mentioned, it was Russell Wilson putting on his own social media account the pictures of the pin being removed, and that's how we know that the pin has actually been removed. So very exciting news for Seahawks fans. As you mentioned, the big win over the Jacksonville Jaguars, where the Seahawks, really did feel like they had kind of turned the page here, and now having number 3 back, it's just that much more exciting for the Seahawks to have the same type of second half surge that has been kind of characteristic of the Pete Carroll tenure.
Yeah, that has typically been the way things have played out, though in recent years, they've had a few seasons where the second half hasn't gone quite as well. They're hoping to get back to their old ways, though, and get on a lengthy winning streak. To make that happen, they need to have number 3 under center, and we don't know for certain that he's going to be able to play in Green Bay. There's a process going to play out here over the next week and a half. According to Carroll today, and it was funny because, reporters were asking him, how's the process work where they remove the pin? And Pete Carroll, with him being the medical professional that he is, was joking that, they're going to grab some pliers. They're just going to yank it out of his finger. I don't know. But he said that it was going to take a few days after the pin was removed for the finger to heal before he could start taking part in some football-related activities. So we are now in that time period in his recovery. He's going to need a few days for that finger to heal up after the pin's been removed, and then he can start throwing a football. We'll see how he progresses there. The hope is next week that he's able to sling the football around and make progress quickly. If that's the case, then he could be activated from injured reserve and be ready to play against the Packers. But his status is still very much up in the air. I do think that it is good news, though. It's an optimistic development, having him come out on Monday with that pin removed instead of, say, Friday. If they had to wait till the end of the week, then that pushes your timeline, makes it much tougher for him to get back. But I think he has a realistic chance, based on people I've talked to over the past couple hours, of getting back in time to play at Lambeau Field. You get number 3 back. He's going against Aaron Rodgers, the 7-1 Packers. Seahawks have a chance to get their first signature win of the year, get closer to 500. A lot to be excited about for a team that's still 2 games under 500. And Wilson's not the only player that could be back next week. Pete Carroll also indicating that Chris Carson told him he's hoping to get back on the practice field next week after missing the last 4 games with a neck issue. Now, it's interesting. We talked about this some on the show last week, speculating whether Carson was even going to be back this season. I think this one is still much more up in the air because of the nature of his injury. We're talking about a spinal issue. That's what Carroll said on ESPN 710 this morning. So they've got to err on the side of caution. But Carson expects to practice next week. If he's able to get clearance from the medical staff, then he could be activated from injured reserve, at least designated to return to practice next week with a chance to play against the Packers. So it's possible that Seattle could have both Russell Wilson and Chris Carson, putting them at full strength to go against one of the best teams in the NFL in Green Bay.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting that Pete Carroll mentioned that it was Chris Carson himself who told Carroll that that the running back was planning on participating in practice, and so obviously then there is a lot of optimism on Carson's behalf that he is feeling better, feels that his neck injury is healing as he would like, or at least he is feeling much more comfortable. Now, as you just mentioned, again, it's obviously a very much more serious injury than Russell Wilson's right middle finger. And so you do want to exercise some caution there. And you love the fact that Alex Collins is playing as well as he is. Obviously got some big plays from Travis Homer, especially, as well as DJ Dallas and spurts this past week against Jacksonville. So I don't think that the running back situation has been quite as ugly as maybe the statistics might suggest. I thought that Alex Collins still made some big time runs, but there is no question about it. If the Seahawks are able to get both Russell Wilson and Chris Carson back, then they are a much more formidable offense. And the Green Bay Packers are a mortal squad, and they showed it with barely being able to eke out the victory here this past week. And the fact that we just saw, some of the big upsets with the Cincinnati Bengals. Of course, they were the number 1 seed in the AFC going down to the New York Jets. There's still going to be some upsets here, in this middle portion of the season. The Seahawks have to be feeling pretty optimistic, considering that their record suggests that they should not be.
Yeah, this is a team that, despite being 2 games under 500, there's reason for optimism with the defense playing well beyond just yesterday. The last 3 weeks, the defense has made strides. Now, you can look at the players they've gone against at the quarterback position, the teams in general they've gone against. But, the Steelers just beat the Cleveland Browns yesterday. The Saints, even after losing Jameis Winston, were able to beat the Buccaneers. So those losses, losing by 3 points in both those games suddenly don't look so bad. Obviously it is killer losing both those games, but those are quality football teams that they lost to, and they were able to beat the Jaguars yesterday. Jacksonville have been playing better going into this game. So we'll see what happens on the Wilson and Carson front. Me personally, I think that Wilson's got a very good chance to be available. Chris Carson, I think, is a 50-50 proposition just because of the type of injury we're talking about. He's got to get clearance first. Wilson, though, that is a significant step, getting that pin removed from his finger, going to really accelerate the timeline for him to be able to get back, barring an unforeseen setback. When we return to the second quarter, as we do every Monday, it's time for our Locked On Seahawks mailbag. We'll be tackling as many questions as we can. You're listening to the Locked On Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another to let you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. It's the worst case scenario in 2021. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirectTV Stream. It brings live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. The best part, you don't have to juggle remotes anymore. No need to buy another device again. No annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirectTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Welcome back to the Locked On Seahawks podcast, Victory Monday edition. I had to do a double take before I said that because it's been so long. I'm your host, Corbin Smith, joined as always by Rob Rang. We've got you covered on all things Seahawks, but the trade deadline is coming up right around the corner tomorrow. In fact, don't miss our live NFL trade deadline show, reaction to every move, plus a second half season preview and much more. Catch the show live from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern, November 2nd on the Locked On NFL YouTube page. Let's get to our Monday mailbag, shall we? Tons of questions from you, the 12s. We had a lot of questions about Russell Wilson's health, so obviously we aren't going to be touching on any of those with the news that came out this afternoon, and we just talked about that in the first quarter. But tons of other topics to dive into, not just with the Seahawks, but with the NFL. First question here from Christopher tweets, what's your reaction to the Rams trading for Von Miller? This was the huge news today, the biggest move so far heading into the trade deadline. And honestly, Rob, this was not a team that I was expecting was going to be making a big move because the Rams already did not have a lot of draft capital. But you want to talk about going all in. I think Sean McVay and company now, they are the poster children for going all in. I think they only have a 5th and 2 7th-round picks now for 2022.
Yeah, but they've got some of the best players in the NFL, and talk about going all in. I mean, they clearly want to be playing the Super Bowl this year, and for good reason. But, making the big trade for Jalen Ramsey a couple of years ago, making the big trade for Matthew Stafford. Oh, by the way, they have the 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, Aaron Donald. They have a superstar pass rusher already in Leonard Floyd, who the Seahawks know far too well. And then to be able to get Von Miller as well. Yeah, this is an exciting move for the Los Angeles Rams, and obviously one that's very concerning for the Seahawks. But it is what it is. I mean, you have to compete, and the Rams, while they are going all in for this season, their salary cap and their draft capital are going to pay the price ultimately. So that's the gamble. Any type of major injury, say to Matthew Stafford, who of course has struggled with durability, that their wide receiver core is as good as it is. That has issues with durability in the past as well. So this is a bold, aggressive move, one that if it does not result in a Lombardi trophy, then it's going to basically be one that is going to wind up being panned in the long run. But I applaud the Rams for pushing all their chips into the table and going for it.
I don't. I think that it is too risky. And I mean, they're going into next year with no first, no second, no third, and no 4th-round draft picks. Now, we may have another question coming up about this here shortly, but I don't care what draft class that you're looking at. Not having a pick in the first 4 rounds and not having a 6th-rounder either on top of that really hamstrings you for the future. And I understand that Von Miller is a big name, but he really hasn't had that great of a year for the Broncos. Now, maybe he does what Carlos Dunlap did in Seattle last year. And once he's traded away from his original team and goes to a contender like the Rams with other really good players up front, maybe he ends up going back, finding the fountain of youth and making some big plays. From that standpoint, they could certainly work out for them. I'm not saying this deal won't work in the short term, but man, the amount of risk that's there. You're already talking about a team that is really rolled the dice in a number of moves. And, maybe that's the way the NFL is trending right now, that teams are just looking at draft picks like, look, you know what? I don't want to play a lottery ticket. I want the sure thing. So I'm going to go get me a proven player. The Seahawks did that with Jamal Adams, whether you agree with the compensation they gave up. It seems like more teams are trending towards that direction where they don't want to play that lottery trying to, let's hope that this pick pans out. You don't know. The draft really is a crapshoot. At the same time, that is a lot of capital they've given up for a few players. And if they have some injuries, things could get ugly for them. And they already just lost their 2nd-round pick, Tutu Atwell, today to a season-ending injury. So this is a team, if they had a few guys go down in the second half, the depth isn't there, and now they're losing draft picks. A lot of risk. It's a very high reward, very high risk deal, and the Rams have shown they're willing to make those trades. Marshall tweets, it seems like teams are just giving up picks like candy this year. Is this draft class in 2022 really that bad? I'm going to lean on you on this question, Rob, being the draft guru that you are, but it does seem like it's weird because the 2021 draft teams are talking like 2022 draft picks are going to be like gold. And yet now here we are several months later, middle of the season, and it seems like teams are changing their tune in that regard.
Well, I can tell you this, the next article I'm going to be writing in Fox Sports is going to be my updated big board, where I'm going to give you my top 32 NFL prospects playing in college football right now. And it is absolutely loaded at cornerback and safety. There's a lot of good offensive and defensive linemen out there. There is not a very good running back class. It's about an average receiver class, and the quarterbacks is as bad as it's been in a long, long time. I was talking to some scouts here just recently, and there is a belief out there that there's a possibility that there may not be a single quarterback that goes in the first round this year. That has not happened, Corbin, since 1996. Now, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's much more likely to be a situation like 2013 when there was only one quarterback that got selected in the first round. That was E.J. Manuel going to the Buffalo Bills. Current Seahawks starting quarterback right now, Geno Smith, was a second-round pick by the New York Jets that year. And so that to me is a little bit more indicative of what this general class is like. But I would disagree. I think this is a pretty solid class. It just lacks some of the flash of some of the recent years. It lacks the immediate impact guys. And so that's one of the reasons why I think that you are seeing teams be a little bit more bold and being willing to trade some of their draft picks to try to win now, the way that the Los Angeles Rams, as we just talked about, did. And so I don't think it's more of a reflection of the draft class itself. I think it's more of the mentality of win now, because this is the NFL, the not for long league. And when you have an opportunity to win, then push those poker chips into the table and go for it, rather than gambling on draft picks that, let's face it, even the best general managers in the NFL still are only hitting at about a 300 level because it's only about 1 in every 3 draft picks that actually winds up making your roster and playing any type of significant time in the future.
Yep, it really is a crapshoot. And like you said, the best GMs in the business, even Bill Belichick misses draft picks, and he misses plenty of them. So all GMs do, even the great ones. You can go get a proven talent like a Von Miller, then you go do that. Like I said, there's certainly some risk with the picks they had already given up, but they're wanting to win a Super Bowl this year. Von Miller can help them do that. Hawkstrologer tweets, do you see Travis Homer getting more time as running back number 2 when Carson is out? He seems to have outplayed Penny and Dallas, and his body type seems to complement Collins, especially since he put on weight this offseason. Some really good points there. I actually think Travis Homer has earned more playing time, and it's crazy because he missed almost all of training camp out with a calf injury. Rashad Penny also would miss some time with a calf injury during camp, but Homer actually looked, he might be the odd man out, and yet the Seahawks, they activated him. He was on the opening day roster, and we've seen him make big plays on special teams. He's had a couple nice runs out of the backfield. He's still their best pass protecting back by a large margin. So I do think he has earned more playing time. And I think that's maybe the thing I'm struggling with, and we'll talk more about this later, but it seems like the Seahawks are really trying to force the issue with rotating their backs right now, where I, as a former running back and former running back coach, would rather see them go with 1 or 2 guys getting the bulk of the snaps instead of trying to rotate 3 or 4 players in. You got to get in a rhythm in the backfield. So I'd like to see that now with Homer. I think he's earned those opportunities. You get Chris Carson back, then he and Alex Collins are probably your 2 main guys, and Homer's your third down runner. But I think right now he has certainly earned more opportunities. Eli writes, what's your ideal trade deadline for the Seahawks? I'm going to throw this to one of you first, Rob. What do you think the Seahawks should do? Should they sit pat? Should they sell? Should they be looking to buy maybe as a bargain shopper? What do you think they should be doing the next 24 hours?
Well, I think that they certainly should be working the phones and just kind of seeing what things are going on out there. Had the Seahawks been formally offered the same deal as, what the Rams just gave it for Von Miller, I would have passed on that deal because, as we've talked about, the Seahawks pass rush, while statistically it's not been as good, I do think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the pass rush. And so we're going to be talking about that here in just a couple of minutes. And the Seahawks, of course, being in draft capital hell with the lack of draft picks that they've had over the last couple of years, and their roster being in a different position than the Rams, then I think that they had to be smart about not giving up those multiple draft selections. But at the same time, if there are players at the cornerback position, perhaps even at wide receiver, that are available for basically nickels on the dollar, then I think that you have to consider that. And so to me, one of the things that the Seahawks did against the Jacksonville Jaguars, that kind of goes back to the last question the Hawkstrologer was asking about, is in using Travis Homer, is I think that the Seahawks did try to use that game against the Jaguars as a possible opportunity to feature all their different running backs and maybe see if they could elicit some interest on the trade market for Rashad Penny, perhaps even for a Travis Homer. Now, I don't want to trade Travis Homer. Travis Homer's playing really good football in every different phase of the game for the Seahawks. But at the same time, I would argue that running back is Seattle's strongest position. And so why not try to show that off right before the trade deadline? I don't know if that's going to work. I would be surprised if Seattle is able to pull off any type of significant trade, by 4 p.m., I believe it is, Eastern time tomorrow. But at the same time, I do think that John Schneider is absolutely going to be working every single phone call that he possibly can.
Yeah, he's going to be working the phones. He's always trying to make sure there's no stone unturned. But I don't see any significant deals going down. Maybe they can get somebody to take LJ Collier for a conditional 7th-round pick or conditional 6th-round pick at most. I don't see him getting anything more than that. I can't see him moving Rashad Penny with what we've seen the last 2 weeks since he came off injured reserve. He certainly hasn't done anything to improve his stock in the eyes of other teams. I just don't see him having anything that they can really sell. And you just won a game 31-7. You've got Russell Wilson coming back. So if they're going to make a deal, then maybe you consider trying to find somebody like a Carlos Dunlap a year ago where, you know what, I'm willing to give up a 7th rounder. I'm not going to give up big draft picks like the Rams did for Von Miller, but maybe you can go out and get a position of need, like adding another pass rusher or going out and finding offensive line help, whatever needs to be done. I think Austin Blythe with the Chiefs might be somebody that's worth looking at because he hasn't been playing with Creed Humphrey in front of him in Kansas City. Maybe you can trade a 7th-round pick for him and you could have him be your starting center. He's played for Shane Waldron before. Those are the type of moves that I think could happen, but I would be surprised if there's much activity for the Seahawks this year in the trade deadline. Last question real quick from Brandon. How did it feel to get burned to a crisp by Quandre Diggs? And this is specifically to me, referencing yesterday in the press conference. Obviously, I was not expecting this, but in the middle of his first question that he was asked, Quandre Diggs decided to make sure to let me know that he did not mess up his assignment covering a post in last week's game against the Saints. And he made sure to let me know he read my grade report as well. So that was what I really took from it. Wow, Quandre, you actually read my stuff. That's the way that I viewed it. But we've ribbed each other a little bit on social media in the past. That's just how he is. And so I was laughing. I thought it was great. I made sure to let him know, you keep making interceptions, you can bag my grades all you want, So really, I didn't consider it that he was burning me or roasting me. I thought it was great. It was funny. I enjoyed it. I was laughing. So no hard feelings. I certainly did not take offense to it. When we come back in the third quarter, we're going to talk about this blowout win for the Seahawks. It's weird saying that. It's been so long since they had a blowout victory, but that's what they did against the Jaguars at Lumen Field on Sunday. Rob and I are going to be sharing our observations on offense, defense, and special teams when we come back. You're listening to the Locked On Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. If you haven't tried Built Bar by now, I'm telling you, you are missing out. It's my go-to protein bar. Anytime I'm lifting weights, running, they say it's a protein bar, but it does not taste like one. You have to try one of these amazing bars for yourself to believe it. Most protein bars are chalky or waxy. Built Bars are not. They're soft, covered in 100% real chocolate. You bite into it, it truly is a different experience. It's like eating a candy bar. They're low carb, low calorie, low fat, low sugar, and high in protein. All the healthy benefits on top of being purely delicious. So many great flavors: raspberry, mint brownie, coconut almond, my personal favorite, peanut butter brownie. This month, Built Bar is coming out with new limited time flavors every 3 to 4 days. So make sure to check out their website often because you don't want to miss out. Go to Built.com and use the promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. That's the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com.
BetOnline is back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of the basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before, including on the World Series. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball, baseball, and football action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, baseball, postseason, NHL, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Welcome back to the Locked On Seahawks podcast, Victory Monday edition. This is your host, Corbin Smith, joined as always by Rob Rang. The Seahawks were coming into yesterday's game riding a 3-game losing streak. Morale was really at a decade low for the Seahawks. And you could see it with the way the stadium looked 10 minutes before kickoff. There was nobody in the stands. It looked like maybe 40% of the seats were filled. And you look before the game, tickets were trying to be sold by season ticket holders, and they couldn't give tickets away. It was just so weird compared to what we've seen throughout this successful era of football with Pete Carroll and company. But it's kind of ironic, Rob. You know, they've had some frightening finishes the last 3 weeks where they haven't been able to close out games and came up just short. And then on Halloween of all days, there was absolutely no terror, no drama. They put this game away early for a 31-7 victory over the Jaguars, a convincing blowout that they absolutely needed going into the bye week.
Yeah, no question about it. And as you said, it was Halloween, and I think Geno Smith was dressed as Superman because he was absolutely spectacular. I mean, just it looked like Russell Wilson out there with just how efficient he was with his passes. He looked completely in control from basically the start of the game all throughout the finish. I mean, just the variety of throws, and these weren't easy little dump off passes. I mean, the throw to Tyler Lockett that got the ball in position where Geno Smith wound up running in or extending the ball over the end zone line to get that first touchdown. I mean, that was an exquisite throw, just beautiful touch there. The back shoulder fade to DK Metcalf, we'll be talking about that here in a couple of more minutes, I thought was a picture perfect pass, and then an even better catch by Metcalf. There's just so many good plays that I thought from so many different parts of the Seahawks game in particular, but Geno Smith deserved a fair amount of wrath for the fact that the Seahawks were not able to finish each of the last 2 weeks. I think that he has to get the very first bit of credit for the way that the Seahawks absolutely blew the Jacksonville Jaguars out of the water this last weekend.
Yeah, I think the game ball and offense absolutely has got to go to Geno Smith. I mean, he started off 14 for 14. He was flirting with perfection late in the first half. I mean, he was just dialed in, throwing dimes. And really the big reason why he had so much success yesterday, 87% of his targets went to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And I had a few people message me like, are you concerned about them not spreading the ball around? No, I'm not. I mean, would I like to see the tight ends get involved? I've been clamoring for that for 5 years. But DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are your two best playmakers. And if the other team is not covering them, they're getting open, then the smartest business decision you could make as a quarterback is getting the football to them. And that is what Geno Smith did right from the outset. Got the ball to Tyler Lockett a bunch. Lockett had 12 receptions for 142 yards yesterday. Metcalf only had 43 yards receiving, but he had 2 touchdowns, and he caught every single target that was thrown his direction by Geno Smith. So those three were just dialed in, and that's the reason the Seahawks were able to roll in this game. I thought Geno Smith played with poise. He played with confidence. His anticipation was there in his throws. The touch, as you mentioned, that first throw to Lockett. How about the one that he made on the double pass coming back from DJ Dallas that he feathered over the top of one of the rookie corners for the Jaguars, Tyson Campbell? That was a difficult throw to make, and he was able to squeeze that in there. So I'm not going to go as far as saying he looked like Russell Wilson, but in a lot of ways he did with the touch that he was playing, with the confidence. The offense was humming, especially in the first half. took their foot off the pedal a little bit in the second half, didn't have as good of pass protection for him in the final 2 quarters. But I thought it was a dominant outing by him. It was a dominant outing from the 2-star receivers on the outside. And it was just nice to see this team play more than 3 quarters of good football on offense.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. I got to go back to DK Metcalf for a second, Corbin. I've been waiting for a performance like this from DK Metcalf for a while now, just because we know what a freakish athlete that he is. But, one of the most frustrating things for me is kind of a talent evaluator is when you see fast guys that don't play fast, you see big guys who don't play big. And DK Metcalf at times will catch the ball at his head level, his chest level, rather than extending his arms and really using his size, using his physicality. But that back shoulder throw in particular, the way that he was able to leap up, really contort his body in the air. Shaq Griffin, a Pro Bowl corner, and obviously one that Seahawks fans know very, very well. He was in perfect position on that play. And DK Metcalf just beasted him at that moment. And so that, to me, was just an absolutely exquisite play. To me, one of those plays that should be remembered for an awful long time. It's kind of similar to the Metcalf running down Buda Baker against the Arizona Cardinals. Pete Carroll has been talking about that. The Seahawks are so close to turning the page. It's plays like that I think can help this team turn the page.
If you're looking for any negatives on offense, I mentioned it a moment ago. The pass protection I thought was really good in the first half. I thought in the second half, not so much. They had more issues, particularly with rushes from the interior. Geno Smith was under a little bit more pressure, and the run game just can't quite get going. We saw Alex Collins in Pittsburgh have 101 rushing yards, but then the last 2 weeks, Collins has not been 100%. Pete Carroll admitted that. He's been playing with a groin injury, just sucking it up. Rashad Penny has not done anything the 2 weeks he's been back. At this point, until he earns opportunities, I feel like the Seahawks are hurting themselves by trying to rotate too many running backs in right now. What has Rashad Penny done to earn those opportunities? You're wasting carries. Yesterday's second half, I can kind of get it. You were up big. You want to see if you can get him rolling, but DJ Dallas has shown more promise. Travis Homer has shown more promise. Alex Collins has looked great for the most part. You don't want to have too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, with your run game. And so I'm hesitant to think that at this point they should be trying to rotate all those players in and give them significant snaps. Rashad Penny hasn't earned that opportunity, and I don't feel like the offensive line at this point has really gotten to where it needs to be in the run blocking department. They've had their moments. I thought they started this game well, but for them to really get out of this hole they've dug themselves in, their run game has got to be much more consistent. And I think part of that stems to the running backs doing a better job with their vision, reading what's going on at the line of scrimmage, and that comes with rhythm. So rotate 1, 2, 3 backs, not 4. I just think, again, too many cooks in the kitchen. That's one thing on offense that worries me a little bit, even coming out of this game.
Yeah, I mean, too many cooks in the kitchen. I think maybe one of them's got to be washing dishes in the back, and I think it's pretty clear which one that should be. I mean, Rashad Penny, 7 attempts for a grand total of 7 yards, and his long was for 5, which of course
bounce happy. He won't stop bouncing. I mean,
exactly.
It's like his rookie year all over again.
It is. And so I do think the Seahawks were attempting to showcase all their running backs against the Jacksonville Jaguars in the hopes of perhaps trying to elicit some type of trade offer. But at the same time, I think that you are absolutely right, Corbin, that Rashad Penny just is not bringing enough to warrant the play time that he has been receiving. Not when Alex Collins, DJ Dallas, and Travis Homer are all playing at a much, much higher level. So I do not anticipate that you are going to see as much Rashad Penny as the season goes on, unless he suddenly starts having some breakthrough performances in practice that is going to earn him a little bit more playing time, because we certainly have not seen that on the actual NFL field during games so far this season, and frankly for quite some time for Rashad Penny. And now we'll go back real quick to as far as the pass protection. To me, one of the concerning things about this game is the fact that the Seahawks still gave up 7 tackles for loss. They gave up 3 sacks. And so considering the fact that they jumped up ahead of the Jaguars as quickly as they did, and yet still allowed as much pressure as they did, to me, that's a little bit concerning when the next team that you're going to be facing against is the Green Bay Packers, and they have an awful lot of talent along that defensive front. It's not just Aaron Rodgers and the offense. That defense is where Green Bay has really made strides this year.
Worth noting that Pete Carroll did mention today that he thought a few of those sacks were on Geno Smith as well for not getting the ball out. So that is still one issue that he's trying to work on. If he has to play against Green Bay, he has to unload the football. Can't afford to hold on and take 10, 12-yard losses in the backfield, which he's done way too much of the last 2 or 3 games. Now, on defense, there's not a lot to be upset about because the Seahawks shut down the Jaguars. They nearly got the shutout. They were upset they gave up a touchdown inside 2 minutes left to play, but they were swarming all over the running backs. James Robinson going down in the second quarter was killer because it seemed like he is really the glue guy for Jacksonville's offense. And not having him out there, they just weren't able to overcome that injury. Once he was out, they couldn't move the ball. Trevor Lawrence had pass rushers all over him. Don't let the fact that he was only sacked one time fool you, or that the Seahawks only had, I believe, 6 quarterback hits. Don't let that fool you. They were all over him. He was rushing out of the pocket, trying to escape pressure constantly. I've got to give Carlos Dunlap some credit because I ripped into him a couple weeks ago. I thought the first 5 games or so that his performance was very underwhelming. I thought he played well against the Saints. And in this game, I had him down for 7 pressures. He was all over Trevor Lawrence all night long. And even though he didn't get a sack, and I don't even believe he had a quarterback hit in this game, he was pressuring him pretty much, it seemed like every play. He also had 2 passes that he knocked down at the line of scrimmage. So he had a fantastic game. He was wreaking havoc. Darrell Taylor, he didn't have great stats, but it seemed like he was in there constantly. First game back from a neck injury, so that's very encouraging. Feels like he is due for a game where he's going to explode with 2 or 3 sacks because that's how close he was to get to Trevor Lawrence a number of times. So I thought it was encouraging seeing how that pass rush was marrying up with the secondary. We've seen improvements in the last couple of weeks. In this game, you saw everything come together. The back half was playing great. No receivers over 40 receiving yards for the Jaguars in this game. So overall, a very impressive defensive effort against a lowly opponent. You have to keep that in mind. But nonetheless, this is a team that I actually was concerned about Seattle slowing them down, and they found a way to nearly pull the shutout in this one.
Yeah, I thought they were going to be able to pull out the shutout. Jacksonville's offense, as you mentioned, when James Robinson went down, it just felt like that was the kind of the linchpin for the Jaguars. I think they were going to lean on him a lot. I mean, he had a nice run off tackle early on. He had a screen pass for I think it was 17 yards. I mean, it just looked like it was going to be Alvin Kamara, Najee Harris all over again. That the Seahawks were going to struggle to be able to contain the running back. And yet once Robinson went down, it felt like the Jaguars, basically abandoned their running game. And so that kind of surprised me a little bit. I think that the Seahawks deserve an awful lot of credit on the defensive side of the ball. The 12s that were there, I think that they deserve some credit. Obviously, the noise and the fact that, you still have, even though he's number 1 overall pick, Trevor Lawrence is still a rookie quarterback who only has 1 NFL victory under his belt at this point. And I think that he definitely got rattled, but he wasn't helped by his receivers either. There was a number of big drops.
Chenault had 2 or 3 of them.
Oh my goodness, and Marvin Jones as well. I mean, one of the hits that Darrell Taylor got on Trevor Lawrence, I believe it was a 3rd and long. That Trevor Lawrence I thought his best throw of the game. I mean, he just a flick of the wrist, and it was a laser hit Marvin Jones right in the hand and bounced off. I don't know if there was the sun in their eyes, because obviously there was a little bit of a weird kind of a glare on the field with the way the sun was coming through. Sun in Seattle on October 31st is kind of surprising in that regard. But at the same time, there was a bunch of drops there. But it wasn't just the drops. It was the fact that Seattle's defensive backs were making breakups. Seattle's defensive line was making breakups. 9 different pass breakups were credited to the Seahawks, and 4 of them were Seattle's defensive linemen. So that's the big guys getting their hands up. And that to me is absolutely one of those things we talked about before about DK Metcalf's catch might be one of those things that helps Seattle turn the page and really get rolling. To me, that's one of the things. If you're not able to get to the quarterback and bring him down, you've got to get your hands up get your hands up and knock down some of these passes, especially against these quarterbacks that are getting the ball out as quickly as they are. to me, that was one of the most encouraging things about this game, Corbin, is that it was guys like Carlos Dunlap. Darrell Taylor, I thought, was spectacular. He had 0 tackles in this game. And I'm telling you, I know that you watched the tape, but people who didn't watch the tape quite as closely, there were so many plays that Taylor was just a hair away from creating a big play. Those big plays are coming, and Aaron Rodgers likes to hold on to the football. So I think that big splashy performance might be coming up here pretty soon.
And shout out to Quandre Diggs. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, he took a nice little jab at me, made sure to get that off his chest in the post-game press conference, but he made history yesterday. He became the first player in the last 5 seasons to have at least 3 interceptions every year. Nobody else has done that. Now, there will be a few others that follow suit, but he's the first player to accomplish it. And he now has 11 interceptions in 28 regular season games since the Seahawks acquired him from the Lions for a 5th-round pick. That has to be one of the worst trades the Lions have ever made, and that's saying something because we're talking about the Detroit Lions organization here. But giving up just a 5th-rounder for him to get a Pro Bowl safety, he's playing like a Pro Bowler again this year. He has an interception in nearly 40% of the games he has played in for the Seahawks. That's just remarkable. So shout out to Diggs. He's earning his money right now. Seattle might regret not giving him that extension before the season, but he is going to be coveted if he somehow hits free agency. Seattle might want to break trends and go with one of those rare midseason extensions here because he has certainly earned it. And last but not least, shout out on special teams to Travis Homer. You sly dog. I thought for sure, they're just going to recover this onside kick 24/7, take a few knees, game's over. But not today, Travis Homer said. Returned the onside kick, 44 yards for the touchdown. As Pete Carroll said after the game, shades of Brian Cushing at USC. And he absolutely loved it. Apparently, they talked about this in their walkthrough on Saturday, and then it happens on Sunday. Awesome play for Homer, who continues to do nice things both on offense and on special teams for the Seahawks. Thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available on all platforms. You can follow me on Twitter at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Check out Locked On Seahawks on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and the all-new Odyssey app. That's AUDACY. When we return tomorrow, it's bye week. We're going to start breaking down some mid-season award winners, even though technically by percentages it's not mid-season. This 17-game schedule is really messing with me, but it is mid-season for the Seahawks with their bye week coming up here in week 9. We're going to dish out some awards on tomorrow's show as well as Wednesday. Looking forward to it. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Go Hawks.